Live now on the Sky News Election Channel.
Pension asset test arrangements shows that nobody can believe any of the unfunded spending promises that he is making. For more than 2 years, Bill Shorten and the Labor Party have been promising families around Australia that they would restore the school kids bonus in government. For the past year, they have been promising part pensioners around Australia that they would reverse the changes that we made to pension asset test arrangements. As late as this morning, Labor is still running an online petition calling on people around Australia to join Labor in fighting our sensible changes that we had to make to put the budget on a sustainable foundation for the future. And despite all of that, it is of course clear now that Labor supports our policy, that Labor has walked away from the promises that they've made once they were confronted with the fiscal realities and with the fiscal recklessness of their past promises and statements. Labor today is in complete chaos and confusion. There is a complete confusion on Labor's front bench as to what Labor's policy actually is, and we still don't know the precise size of Labor's budget black hole. We do know that Labor has a multi-billion-dollar budget black hole. We do know that just based on the measures, the budget repair measures in the Parliament that Labor has been opposing, that Labor is starting from behind in this campaign when it comes to the state of the budget. So every single promise that they're making in this campaign is unfunded and as such cannot be delivered after an election or would lead to higher taxes. But what Bill Shorten needs to clarify today, what about the $1.3 billion saving that the government has been seeking to legislate in relation to the Australian Renewable Energy Agency? What about the $1.6 billion cost of Labor's past statements and promises in relation to public hospital funding? Bill Shorten, having backflipped and been forced to clarify his position on the school kids bonus and in relation to the pension asset test, now must come out and explain to Australian families what his position is in relation to all of the other past promises and statements that he has made, because it is very clear that a promise from Bill Shorten made over an extended period, over more than 2 years, is worth nothing. And in contrast, the coalition has a budget which provides for all of the spending commitments that we've made. We can guarantee that all of the spending commitments that we've made in our budget are fully paid for by spending reductions in other parts of the budget. Happy to take questions.
Given what Labor's said about the pension assets test and the school kids bonus, do you concede that the budget black hole that you're talking about is lower?
Well, the budget black hole is still massive. The budget black hole is still multi-billion dollars worth of unfunded promises and statements that Labor has made in the past. Because just looking at the measures that the Labor Party has opposed in the Parliament and continues to oppose, they are starting from behind. Looking at all of the promises that they've made so far, they are in a budget black hole of many billions of dollars. And it is incumbent on Bill Shorten to clarify his position. He has been forced into a back down in relation to their past promises on the school kids bonus and in relation to the pension asset test. For 2 years, more than 2 years, Bill Shorten and Labor has been promising to families around Australia that they would restore the school kids bonus. Jenny Macklin, as late as last week, was campaigning in Tasmania promising that Labor would restore the school kids bonus. As late as this morning, when I looked up Labor's online petition, they were still running an online petition calling on pensioners around Australia to stand with Labor against our changes to pension asset test arrangements. Will Labor now write to all of the people who have signed the petition to explain to them that they actually support the coalition policy when it comes to putting pension asset test arrangements on a more sustainable foundation for the future? Will Labor come out today and explain the status of all of their other past promises and statements? Because right now, people around Australia know that they can't trust any of the promises and statements that Labor has made in the past when it came to supposedly reversing savings measures that this government has had to take in order to put the budget on a better foundation for the future.
This number of $67 billion, so you admit that that's now off the table, and it's significantly lower than that because of what Labor has said.
Well, the point is this. $67 billion was the cost of all of Labor's past promises and statements that they've made as we approach this election. Now, Labor, bit by bit, is backing down from past promises and past statements. Now, even though they've now backed down from some of the past promises and statements they've made, they are still many, many billions of dollars in the red, which means that Bill Shorten is not able to pay for any of the spending promises he's made in this campaign. Unfunded spending promises before an election cannot be delivered after an election. The unfunded spending promises before an election will lead to higher taxes or more debt after an election, which is bad for the economy, which is bad for jobs and growth.
As the Finance Minister now, if you had to put a number on the black hole, what would you put it at?
Well, I mean, Labor is flip-flopping all over the place. There's complete chaos and confusion in relation to the status of Labor's past promises and statements. So it is incumbent on Bill Shorten to clarify in relation to every single one of their past promises and statements what their current position is, what they are still committed to, and what they've walked away from. Because it is Bill Shorten doesn't know what the size of his budget black hole is. Bill Shorten would be very well aware that he has a massive multi-billion-dollar budget black hole. He could clarify the situation today by releasing a year-by-year costing over the forward estimates of all of his promises and all of his savings, and then everyone across Australia can see what the negative impact on the budget bottom line would be from an implementation of Labor's promises and statements in the past, and everybody can then form a judgment on what the impact of that would be on our economy moving forward.
Minister, did the Australian government ask for any reference to Australia to be removed from the UNESCO report on climate change?
I'm not aware of that issue at all. I would refer you to the relevant minister.
What do you think about the report that says that?
Well, I'm not going to comment on something that I'm not aware of.
The McKell Institute has said today that housing prices will continue to grow on average by 2.6% under Labor's negative gearing changes, which is less than is now forecast, but not quite the crash that the government has been predicting. Do you want to comment on this?
Well, that is a Labor think tank supporting Labor policy. I mean, that is hardly a surprise. The more independent and objective assessment of Labor's ill-thought-out approach when it comes to negative gearing is that it will drive down the value of existing properties, that it will push up the cost of rental accommodation, that it will lead to rental stress for many families across Australia, and indeed that it will take an opportunity away for middle-income families to get ahead. We've got to remind ourselves what negative gearing actually is. Negative gearing is the opportunity for families around Australia to leverage the value of their existing home, to leverage their existing income into investment into additional income producing or appreciating assets like a small business, like a commercial property, like an existing residential property. Now Labor wants to take that opportunity to get ahead, away from families around Australia. We don't support that approach. We don't support an approach that will drive down the value of existing properties, and we don't support an approach that will push up the cost of rental accommodation.
So you still maintain that it will cause a crash in housing costs?
Well, as we've said all the way through, Labor's ill-thought-out policy on negative gearing would drive down the value of existing properties. It will push up the cost of rental accommodation. It would cause rental stress to many families around Australia. And as the Real Estate Institute of Australia says, it will push up the cost of rental accommodation by up to 10%. And of course, it will take away an opportunity for families around Australia to get ahead, as they currently can, by leveraging the value of their home and the existing income they have into additional investment into income producing and appreciating assets. And it is not a policy that we support, and it's not a policy that we would be implementing in government. Thank you very much.